Thank you so much, Beata. Another round of applause. Ladies and gentlemen, let's rise for the presence of the First Lady of the Republic of Namibia. A round of applause, please. Madam Gengos, you are recognized. Let's please be seated. Thank you so much, Beata, for warmly welcoming us. And I think from her welcoming speech, we can establish from the get-go that there are no strangers here this afternoon, only friends that we are yet to meet. With that being said, I want you to look at your neighbor and say, let's make it lekker. That was not lekker. I want it a bit louder. Look at your neighbor and say, let's make it lekker. Yeah, that was much better. So before I took to the stage, one of my fellow SRCs turned to me and said, you better not go and embarrass me. So I hope you guys don't embarrass me now as we want a roll call. And we move straight into the next. Okay, we move straight next into the next point on the agenda, which is entertainment from a group. When I saw them practicing, I always thought that break a leg was a figurative speech. But once I saw them, I see these guys really took it literally. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome the Delamore group. Round of applause, please.
Sans laisser un mot. T'as préféré fuir comme un enfant, partir sans te retourner. Je te prêtais mon cœur et tu lui as donné ton dos. Toi tu m'as fait gaspiller mon temps, tu ne m'as pas laissé parler. Aïe. Et maintenant tu reviens et comme avant tu espères retrouver celui qui t'a aimé, celui avec qui t'as joué. Et maintenant c'est toi qui veux parler, de toutes tes meilleures phrases tu veux les coller. Ne gaspille pas mon temps, yeah. Oh le temps m'a réparé, plus rien n'est comme avant, quelqu'un m'a déjà soigné. Oh le vent a bien tourné, ne gaspille pas mon temps, une autre a pu me soigner. Ne me fais pas croire que je...
It's LAS, baby.
Nenda penduka, nina omfeta umaduka, no Maria lio la buga, así que comenzó con duga.
K busy, give me that beat, make it easy. I'm busy when I'm busy. That ain't what you really want, I'm busy. So stay a night, salute and get back when body. Cause you're not shikari, you man ain't got pull your night.
Continue.
Ladies and gentlemen, another applause, please. Now, on the one hand, I want to say that was an amazing, amazing performance. But on the other hand, I only have 5 fingers. So, ladies and gentlemen, that was an amazing performance. Another round of applause, please. Next on the program, we have Daniel to come and give a remarks on the unveiling of a dispenser. Just before he comes, yesterday when Daniel and Roman were introducing themselves to us, they said they were from the O Foundation. So that was just word to mouth. But today when I got the program and I saw the spelling of O Foundation, I actually saw that this is not O, but this is actually how we pronounce it in the South. O. And that's one of my chants. So when I say O, everyone say O. O. Much louder. We are young people. Everyone, oh! Let's all welcome Daniel from the O Foundation.
All right, dear Excellencies, honorable members of the government, colleagues from UNAIDS and UNFPA, friends, young leaders of Be Free and O Foundation and Youth Against AIDS, it's a pleasure for me to welcome you here on this very special occasion because this day marks the kickstart of our program, our condom distribution program that we are implementing here together with the Be Free movement. But before I start to talk about condoms, I just want to share the story of Youth Against AIDS a bit. And I want to, with this story, I especially want to inspire the young leaders of Be Free and maybe showcase what you can achieve with passion, commitment, and will. And I want to invite you to transform your society into a society that you want to live in. So when we started with Youth Against AIDS, it's basically nearly 12 years ago, on World AIDS Day, December 1st. We as young people, student representatives, we sat together on World AIDS Day and we realized no one is talking about HIV and AIDS anymore. So we started with our own awareness activation on campus. We handed out condoms, we gave away red ribbons, and we collected funds. And we were pretty successful because we collected over $20,000 funds with the involvement of donors in the community. We asked companies for support. And this success day, this World AIDS Day, 12 years ago, was the starting point of Youth Against AIDS. And then we started to just establish the organization, and we gave workshops in our school, in the neighborhood, in the community. And we realized that young people really, like they didn't listen. Because for them, HIV and AIDS is not really relevant. They think has nothing to do with me. It's somewhere else, it affected other people. But given that learning, we realized that we have to follow a broader approach. That's the consequence of this learning is that we recently launched O Foundation. O means Organization for Human Health and Happiness. Because we realized HIV today is really closely connected to certain topics. It's gender equality, it's gender-based violence, it's poverty, it's self-confidence, body images, stigma, all of that. And we need to, and this is why Be Free is also close to my heart, because it's exactly the same approach. We want to solve the issue comprehensively. Today we are not on track. We are missing the UNAIDS targets. We see that still young people get infected by HIV and AIDS every day in a world where we have all the tools on the table. Imagine we have condoms, we have the knowledge of how we transmit the virus, how we can prevent the transmission. But for many reasons, young people acquire HIV these days because, and this is like my personal view, I think we are lacking access. Young people have no access to knowledge. They don't have access to safety devices. When I say safety devices, I personally mean condoms, because this is what our work is about. And they don't have access to support. And O Foundation wants to help to provide young people with access to knowledge, safety, and support, and help them to live healthy lives. And this is the core of our work. And one part of this work is Youth Against AIDS. It's a program that we are running on campuses, in schools, to give young people free access and easy access to condoms. Some may think, condoms, they are around for many years, is this really a new thing? But condoms are still the most effective tool for us to prevent STIs, to prevent HIV, and also unwanted pregnancies. So that's why we keep persistent and why we really want to push condoms forward, even though people might think it's something from the past, but it's still relevant. And of course, condoms don't, like a condom doesn't make sex better, from my personal view. Maybe you have other experiences, but a condom is a necessary tool to keep you healthy and to prevent you from acquiring an STI, especially when you don't know your status, when you're not tested. So that's the reason why condoms are still very, very important. And what we do together with Be Free, we want to provide people with, young people with an additional option. Because we realize, of course, there are condom campaigns out there. There are condoms. Sometimes they face stockouts. Sometimes young people find excuses because they don't like this condom, they'd rather have this condom. And what we try to do with the Youth Against AIDS program, give young people additional options to prevent them from STIs. And we also, like, this whole program is youth-led, because we asked people, young people on site, we conducted surveys, research, really to find out what would be a gap that we can fill. So together with young people, we designed the condom packages, we designed the dispenser, and now we install this dispenser in very public places, on-site campus. Why public? Some people argue, when it's so public and you can go there, people might look at you and you might promote sex. I would respond, we already have condom containers in toilets, but we still see that there's no uptake in condoms among young people. So I don't know if this is the golden path, but at least it's another idea, like another option that we want to push forward to see if this might make a difference. And all of you that you're going to these dispensers, you are ambassadors, because you show that you don't have to feel ashamed to getting a condom. You just go to this dispenser, you pull, and you get condoms out of it. It's very simple. When you pass this test, you're also ready to have safer sex. So this is really what I want to encourage you to do. Invite your friends and make it easier for your peers to access condoms, just by supporting them, going there yourself, and make it a normal thing to carry condoms. It's still a taboo, especially in conservative societies, but we as the youth, as I mentioned earlier, we have the power to transform the society. So each and every one, you're Be Free, of course, as Be Free ambassadors, you have the power to influence your environment. You really have the power to change things, and that's what I'd like to see once we started this program, that you help us to make this a real success. And at this stage, I would like to ask my colleague Roman, who's leading this program here in the region, to just showcase the dispenser so that you can see what you can expect from us. A warm welcome for Roman, of course. Because I'm in Germany, I don't start to dance. It's not because I don't like to dance, but it just, after this group, I feel ashamed to dance. So, and I recommend you don't go to a club in Germany. You would be frustrated about the moves that we show. So that's basically, it's our condom dispenser, Youth Against AIDS, and our claim, and that's really important, it's do it with love, respect, and condoms. We want you to enjoy your youth. We want to enjoy life, try new things out, but please do it with love, respect, and condoms, and especially love and respect goes in both directions. It also is a commitment to your partner. Respect your partner, love yourself, love your partner, because it always goes hand in hand. So, and if you go to your condom dispenser, just go there, pull, and you get a free condom out of it. It's pretty simple. Thank you very much. Thanks again to the First Lady for your constant support for championing this movement. Thanks also to Stephen, who's really a great companion of ours and helps us to make this a real success. Also, thank you for your support from your colleagues from UNAIDS. And I hope we can also invite the health department to help us to grow this. Thank you very much again. Have a great day, and we are out. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Daniel and Roman. I think that was very illustrative to see how exactly and how easy and accessible the condoms will be. So one last time before Daniel goes back to Germany, when Daniel goes back, we'll tell them we are no longer the O Foundation, but the O Foundation. So let's give him a loud O. A loud O. Wonderful. So next on our program, we have a panel discussion. And I always have this analysis that I do whenever I see a program that has a panel discussion and the names of the panelists are on there. I always want to figure out how is the balance between male and female representations within the panelists that are participating. Within the panelists that are participating. And the reason for this is because of an experience that I had in 2017. We're having a debate with different learners from different regions regarding gender inequality. And one of the individuals was a guy from Oshikoto region. He got up and you could see that he was really stressed out. He said that at his school, there's no balance of gender equality. He said, number one, the principal is a male. The teacher is a male, the head of department is a male, but what stressed him out the most was that even the head boy was a male. So I'm just so happy that we don't have such an inequality today. With that being said, I want to welcome our moderator, Twilika Andreas, and her panelists, which she will welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, a warm round of applause, please. The panelists as well.
Staying up all night under the city lights, starting off alright, ending it so nice. Bengusa baby, get number one. Hey, I look for baby, make a long baby, you're the one. Falling again, but do not come back. I see so sorry. Hey, Bengusa baby, oh my lighty number one. You're number one. Hey, only killer baby, oh baby number one. I feel so very oh baby number one.
Okay, sorry for that technical delay. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, Her Excellency, the First Lady, all protocols observed, my fellow young people, welcome to this very open and relaxed discussion about challenges that young people face on tertiary level. On the panel with me today are various young people from various institutions in Namibia. On my far right, no left, right, yes, I have Roman from the O Foundation. I have Susan from IUM. I have Maypril from Main Campus. And then I have Risto. Risto is from the Condomize campaign. And then I also have Tangeni from WVTC and Berta, the brand ambassador of the Be Free campaign. My name is Tuilika Andreas, and I will be moderating today's discussion. So, before I start off, I'm sure all of us here, young people, can relate to the fact that when we come from home to university, we experience a major culture shock. Literally, you have to maybe stay with an aunt. You have to struggle to find your way. You literally have to struggle to kind of adapt to this new lifestyle of being on your own, being independent. And with that said, I just want to start off the discussion by asking Susan, what are the different challenges that you think young people really face when they come to university? And how can they go about actually, maneuvering through these challenges?
Thank you to Ilika for the question. So first of all, to answer your question, I have prepared 3 points, 3 main challenges that I've seen that they are the main. So the first one is harassment by lecturers. And just to start off, all these points in a way leads to teenagers or youth practicing unprotected sexual activities. So the first one is harassment by lecturers. As much as this is a sensitive topic, we have been reading newspapers for the past years about lecturers who harass students, and we can't ignore that it's still happening in our society. In most cases, the victims are silent or they don't speak out because they're afraid, because they are going up against professors, doctors, and master's holders. So they tend to keep quiet. I have a WhatsApp group, and in this WhatsApp group, we have teachers, we have learners from different schools, and we have students from different universities. And one of the topic last week that we debated on was lecturers and student relationship, where most of the students, where one can conclude that students are still harassed by lecturers. It's still happening. And my second point to answer your question is pressure for good grades. Growing up in a black family, let me say, you are forced to go to school, you are forced to attain the marks that you are forced to pass. So it's like it builds up a level of stress where, where, you, uh, where you are forced by the parents and the university to achieve top scores. And this creates stress among students. This then forcing students to engage themselves in risky sexual practices with lecturers for good marks. Because tuition fee is already expensive, then you cannot again be failing modules which are again expensive and your family can't afford to pay. And my next problem that I've encountered is financial crisis. So we can say in a way that there's a link between financial crisis and risky sexual practices among students. Students experience negative economic shocks are more likely to indulge themselves in sexual activities, unprotected sex, so as a means of survival, and this money is used to pay for their tuition fee, accommodation, food, toiletries, and transport. Some students are even accommodated by these, what we call now sugar daddies and sugar mummies. So in a way, they don't have a say when it comes to sex. So you do what I say because in a way you are benefiting what you want from it. And in conclusion, I just feel like student parliaments, we as students should use, we all have student parliaments from our campuses, so we should use student parliaments, to address all these issues. And going back to the harassment by lecturers, I feel like the code of conduct is silent, or in a way that students are not aware of it because we find that lecturers are misconducting themselves because we cannot report these things as we are not aware what is stipulated in the code of conduct. So it essentially it begins with us youth building a better future for the next generation, and everything that we do should benefit us and our children. So yeah, thank you.
Yes, I do believe that, Susan. I think she made a very relevant point when she mentioned that as young people, when you come to the city, you also want to look nice, you want to enjoy your life, you want to go out and thrive and do all these things. But the money, there's no money. So, your parents are probably also suffering at home, and you want to forget that suffering at home as well. And when you come to university, you just want to enjoy life. You finally have the freedom. And we tend to turn to people who take advantage of us. And these people are often our lecturers who we look up to in the university. So now, in terms of also coming to the city again, I think it's important to also understand other challenges that students face, and with those are the mental health challenges. I think even now that we're in COVID, they are probably even more exacerbated. So I'd like to ask Maypril to just touch a little bit on what challenges students face in terms of mental health and how they can actually go about surviving these ills that they go through.
Okay. So I believe the COVID-19 crisis has brought our education system's disparities to light. So we used to believe that, education is a great equalizer, like a social equalizer to pave the road to social mobility. But now we're actually aware of the cracks that exist within our education system in regards to those that are now currently connected and those that are not connected. I want to highlight the key issues that COVID-19 brought that can maybe be triggers to these mental health issues that you're now referring to. So when we look at the issues that students are currently facing, especially now just using UNA main campus as context, we have students that come from disadvantaged backgrounds. We have students that have no access to services, clean water, to safe home environments. And then when COVID came, we actually drove these students off campus, where it was maybe their safe haven, a safe space for them, where they had students that they could identify with, because the umbrella term of today's discussion, that I was informed, is also identity that students form on campus. So when we're looking at these issues that are brought, we are driving students back, or the issues that I've noticed with COVID-19, we are driving students back to unsafe housing environments or to communities that don't actually align with higher education. I'm even aware of the student. She's from the San descent, and she lives in a desert, so it's her entire community, they don't have access to internet, they can't even accommodate her maybe aspirations, they don't understand that far, and now she's not surrounded by people that maybe understand her struggles. We also have students, or we're also faced with now the issue of digital literacy, or students even having access to that. We know that there are lecturers, they don't even maybe understand Zoom. I have lecturers, they constantly call me to set up the Zoom meetings, and it's like, it's pretty easy, like, sir, just look at the pamphlets, I guess. But then we want students to be independent learners, because we are transitioning now, as you were mentioning. We are coming from high school to university, and we want students to be more independent, but then we don't even have the foundation for them to use this. There were students that came to my office as SHA Academic Affairs, and they wanted me to go through them the university webpage so they could access their Moodle, see how they can actually submit their assignments. And then this brings to light, then we get angry at students for not submitting their assignments, and then these students are overworked, or they are feeling very under pressure, and then they have this fear of failure, then that leads to like that irrational fear, and then anxiety now. And then we have students that are maybe depressed just because, anxiety, depression, mental health issues, sometimes triggered by this very, very sudden change in habits and routines. So these students are just like, they don't understand how they should do things anymore, and then they become overwhelmed, and then they're now anxious. And then we also have I also want to point out the financial problems that come with this, and then how they could also lead to the mental health issues, because we are depriving students of their work-study opportunities. Like, I know University of Namibia, we have a department, Office of the Dean of Students, that deals with job placements, assists needy students, and then maybe gives them employment contracts, maybe like they can work at the hub, the DH, under computer center, anything, just to assist these students to get daily allowances. Now, what happens then is their social or their employment contracts were cancelled because we are not having face-to-face. There's no one to assist you on campus. We don't have our DHs, or like our dining areas and cafeterias are very virtual right now. The people maybe just have small staff because there's not a lot of people that are constantly on campus. And because of this, the students lost their jobs, their source of income. And you guys know, like, heightened frustrations come with like not having ideas on how to pay for your studies, or even just food allowances now. So that could also lead now to the depression. I'm sorry, just to still continue. And because it's very much like, you can't just pinpoint. And then we also look at how COVID-19 has also worsened the gender gaps in regards to education. I know girls that are now currently so under pressure at home, because now their parents think you are just at home, your brother is also at home, you have to cook for everyone, you have to come and clean, and then there's that, now they're feeling very much overwhelmed, they're now like, I can't even, let me just choose a struggle, let me just be an older sister. But then in the same light, we have boys whose parents probably lost jobs and things. So now, because they maybe have a bit of university background, their parents are saying go find jobs. So now they can't even continue just with their studies. And this can now also lead to the entire frustration and now the problems with mental health. And just another key major point that I think we've been overlooking when we're thinking about mental health, and even just how COVID-19 has affected people, because I know a lot of us are just like, okay, access to devices, access to internet, these students, but we're also forgetting, in as much as we can also provide access to these things, there are also students that even though you give them that access, can't access this. We are talking about now the disabled students, the disabilities you can see, and then the disabilities you can't see. Because the software systems, maybe because COVID-19 was so rapid, and obviously we can't judge how we've been dealing with it because it's a learning curve for everyone. The universal platform that they created is not actually catering to all students. I know there are students in hearing, like who have visual imperatives. They can't even look at slides, they can't read, they need interpreters, students who can't listen to the class lessons that the teacher sends them, and even students who had to change courses just because the interpreters can't actually teach them that material the way, like online. You can't tell someone that's blind, okay, just think of x to the power of 2. They can't see the power, that whole upside down V thing that we are talking about. So, and then these students are frustrated, they go to the counselors who are then also unreachable because they're in such isolated areas in society. So not all of them are getting the help that they deserve or like need. Just to round out,
No, thank you for that input, Mapril. I think it was quite extensive and well elaborated. I realized that today, ever since COVID came, we as young people use slogans like, we move, or tough times never last, only tough people do. You know, we came up with all of these things to console ourselves, all these memes that we send around to hide, you know, how we actually feel about certain things. And instead of actually, you know, confronting the issue and just, if you're depressed, you're depressed. It's okay to be depressed, you know. You can actually get help. You can actually reach out. But since, you know, sometimes it's also just hard to find somebody to talk to. Personally, I wouldn't also comfortably want to tell anyone my problems. You know, these are all things that we face in terms of mental health. But now, I think moving away a little bit from, you know, the challenges and the mental health, it's also important now as she mentioned about, you know, all these intergenerational relationships that students have with lecturers and just trying to survive in general. I think I'd like to ask Risto, you know, in terms of, you know, the attitude about sex, with regards to sex on campus, off campus, amongst young people, how is their attitude and what factors are involved that actually cause them to have a negative attitude that results in consequences that they actually can't manage or that we can't manage at the end of the day?
Thank you very much. I think most students are at higher risk, sexually at higher risk. When you look at most student wants to prove the standard of being a student. Like they said, you need to differentiate between being a student, a tertiary, and being a learner. So you opt to do something that is more what other people are doing. And at the end of the day, you find that young people or students are able to do things that are not guided. Parents withdrew themselves from supporting. The moment you finish grade 12, you become at the tertiary. Parents, they start to think like, you are old enough to make decisions. And for you to make decisions, because where you came from, at home, they were not talking about sex. Sex is a taboo. And you learned about sex through social media. And when you come to universities, where you see internet is everywhere, you start to learn how to indulge into unprotected sex. And also sometimes it was already shared here, if you look around, there are no condoms. We are all sexual beings. Because of us being sexual beings, it means sex is part of us. And if tertiaries, there are no condoms, it does not mean that students will not stop having sex. They will find the means to have sex because there's nothing around that can able to protect. And one thing that is pushing them, especially at students, we have this catch of transactional sex. Imagine you came from a rural area where your parents could not able, even you struggle to pay for you from schools. Now you come to university and they cannot even able, you did not have NASAFs to pay it for you. What do? You indulge into transactional sex where you're able to sell yourself to get money and pay for your tuition fees, all things like that. But the baseline for me is that people are not talking about sex. Because the moment you start to talk about sex, they start to portray you like you like sex. And the moment you cannot talk about sex, then it's a problem. I always used to ask, when you see a 1-year child, a boy or a girl, how is their characteristic? You find them, they were able to play, if it's a boy, playing with their penis. What does that mean? It means this boy is having emotion of erection, but he doesn't know what is going on. A girl will play with the vagina because the vagina is lubricated. The girl doesn't know. What will the parents do? Will just slap on the hands for you to stop. But that thing is in the system. Now you are not guided. You come to university as a student. These things are happening. And because of all this pressure that we are seeing, because you want to become like Risto, who is seen on social media, you want now to do a lot of things to suppress what Risto is doing. So for me, it is time that at university, we should talk about sex. Sex is part of us because people are having sex wrongly and because they are not educated, especially like me. I don't like giving an example of others. I ask myself, who taught me sex? I always ask myself, who taught me all these styles? I don't know. And imagine at my age, Once my mom even was trying to wash my trouser and then she found a condom. She was so cross at my age. Then I asked, oh, mom, do you want to say that if you could not find a condom, it means I'm still a virgin? You get it? So these type of discussions is very important that we at tertiary, we should start to have this type of dialogues to understand sex and to see if you are going to indulge in sex, how do you protect yourself or what can you use to protect yourself against from all other issues around it.
Thank you, Risto. Thank you. And I think one thing I love about the Be Free movement is the uncomfortable conversations, talking about sex, Risto saying that his mom found a condom and she's still shocked, These are uncomfortable conversations that we need to carry into our communities. And I think another funny thing is that we are so uncomfortable about sex, yet we are so comfortable to make jokes about it. It's a weird relationship, really, if you think about it. Or it's so easy to talk about other people having sex, but when it comes to yourself, it's like, oh my God, no, not me. It's the shame that's surrounded by it. And also just talking a little bit about contraceptives and condoms, I believe that there's so much shame around that as well, especially for young women in Namibia, just walking up to the dispenser, for example, confidently getting your condom. I feel like that's such a difficult thing to do because of all the eyes staring at you. Oh, she's having sex. Oh, she's what? The labeling that comes with all of that. And I think not just the shame, but also just the uncomfortability of talking about contraceptives or the fact that contraceptives are not something that should be used. Now, just to add on to the conversation of using condoms and the importance of that, I'd like to ask Roman to just take us through.
Okay, so can you hear me well? Okay, perfect. So when it comes to condoms, we see different challenges in different regions in the world. And I can tell you also from our experience that there are always challenges around condoms. So when we have a look, for example, in Germany, where we are also running a huge program when it comes to peer-to-peer education together with the federal government, the huge problem of young people is, for example, the accessibility of condoms also in Germany. So even they have the money to buy the condoms, it's also very hard for them to reach the condoms. So there's a lot of stigma around the condoms. It's complicated for young people to go to the supermarket or to the drugstore to get the condoms. So what we are trying also in Germany is to really give young people a very easy access. For example, in this region, and we have a much bigger program at the moment in place in South Africa. So we are expanding at the moment, as you see, and I'm very honored to be here with all of you today, to Namibia. We see an issue that, at some colleges there are condoms. So for example, in South Africa, there's the Max condom, which was the choice condom before. Here in Namibia, there's the Smile condom, and we also saw some of the dispensers at different colleges here in Namibia. But I never saw a condom dispenser with Smile condoms in Namibia which was refilled or which was working. So it is not our approach that we put the next condom dispenser just at the side and have an empty next condom dispenser. Our motivation is to implement, together with our great partners from Be Free, a condom distribution program where young people here in Namibia can access condoms easily. And also to hear about the needs of young people, because we know that young people are also curious when it comes to condoms. So do they like thin condoms or rubbed condoms? Which taste do they like, or which smell? Is it strawberry, is it grape, or is it banana? So, and a lot of people are laughing if we are talking about the different types of the condoms, and if young people like these kind of condoms, but ask yourself. I mean, it's really important, and also the statistics, and for our work, it's also very important to be evidence-based. It's really important to find out what are the needs of the young people and what are the requirements when it comes to the program. And that is why we are running our pilot program at the moment here in Namibia at 3 different campuses. It's the UNAM campus over here, it's Noidam campus, and I'm seeing also some of their students sitting just over there. And we have the WVTC campus where we also install our machine and run a pilot to find out which is the right location for the condom machine, what are the right condoms, And is the program working the way that we think? But for us, it's always also about learning. And this is a very important issue for us because, you know, we come here as foreigners. And the first thing what we've done was we were meeting with different NGOs to learn more about young people. And normally, and I'm sorry if I'm talking a bit longer, we try not to talk too much because if you're talking, you're not listening. And for us, it's really important to listen to young people because you are the ones who knows best what's working here. You are the ones who have a lot of friends over here and can tell us, okay, this is working or this is not working. So, and that's also why it's so important for us to work together with Be Free, with a strong supporter in Her Excellency, the First Lady of Namibia, and to have them as a very strong partner at our side to fulfill our promise and to have a sustainable program here in Namibia where we provide young people with condoms they like and they use also at the end of the day, not only for water bombs, but also for sex. So I'm really looking forward to do this program here in Namibia.
Thank you for that. Thank you. I think having a wide range of choice for which condom to use is quite nice. Don't you think? Which flavor to use? I think it's nice. And I think we should make these conversations more flexible, you know, not shy away from them. And really just grateful again to the O Foundation for coming to our country and starting these initiatives and partnering up with various NGOs like the Be Free. And I'm also talking about risky behavior, you know, associated with students and tertiary level education. It's also important that we look at how alcohol and, you know, other substance abuse influence how students mitigate around, you know, sexual behavior and so on. You know, sometimes you find yourself in the moment and you are just under alcohol influence and you just don't have time to think about a condom, or a condom is not even if you ask like, okay, can we get a condom? It's like, it's too late. We are already too far off, you know? So how then does alcohol, you know, influence student life on a tertiary level? If you could just answer that for us, please, Tangeni.
Thank you for the opportunity. Well, I thought all of us would get a glass of wine after this, but yeah, okay, let's get into this. Let me start off with my own opinion, whereby many young men intend to, when they use drugs, they intend to ignore or to care less about society, and with that, they chase the ecstasy of being high. They want to be in the moment. Like most of us say, you want to live YOLO, you only live once in the moment. And at the other point as well is there is a pre-convinced notion among males and females, whereby they talk about how the condoms take away the sexual desires. So they want to, and once a man takes out the condoms, they feel out of the mood. And to go back to alcohol, that alcohol has been a major issue amongst the youth. As stats says, we are roughly number 2 in the world with the highest consuming of alcohol. And to mention few stories, or just to highlight, there by our campus there's it's a bin whereby these students usually go drink. And whenever they go there, there's a hostel. So whenever they come back, it's a whole commotion taking place, because these men and women, they just want to, once they see a woman or the other gender, they just want to be in the moment. They don't consider or compromise when talking to another woman.
Okay, thank you for that input. You know, also looking at the fact that somebody can be under the influence of something and not necessarily conscious or being able to make a proper, well-calculated decision. These are situations that we find ourselves in quite often as young people. Often not really because we choose to, but maybe because we are peer pressured to, you know. There are a lot of factors that play a role. But now, thinking about somebody who is vulnerable, thinking about somebody who is innocent, or just coming from a home where they are trying to survive in the city, we are also faced with a lot of, you know, gender-based violence. We are faced with a lot of, you know, all these negativities that are imposed upon both the girl child and the boy child when they reach university. So I'd just like to ask Berta to please take us through, what are the probabilities of facing gender-based violence on campus, and how can a young woman or man, overcome this or just find a way to kind of navigate through this?
Right. Thank you so much, Tuilika. Hi, everyone. So I think something that is, just before I fully get into that, something that is so important that Tuilika mentioned that I don't want to get lost in the conversation is the example that you gave of the girl walking up to the condom dispenser and just how there's so much labeling that goes on around that, right? And how I don't want it to be lost on us that there's different attitudes towards sexual behaviors of men/boys and the sexual behaviors of women/girls. And that speaks very much into the framework of transitioning, right, between high school and university. So you come typically from a household where your beliefs and your perceptions on sexual behavior and sexual relationships are formed for you. So now you come to you come to university and you have the liberty to decide who you want to sleep with, how, when, how many people in a day, which kind of condom you want to use, if at all. And you can go dizzy with that kind of freedom. And many times the absence of guidance in that intersection or in that transaction can be very difficult. But it's also important to recognize that it poses uniquely distinct challenges for boys and girls, or for boys than for girls, right? So, and I'm thinking specifically also about transactional intergenerational relationships and how many times you see you come as a young girl, you realize that you hold some degree of, your sexual prowess gives you a certain degree of power. I always make this joke with my friends where it's like, oh yeah, I probably shouldn't be saying this, but whatever. Where it's like, you're dressing up and you want to go out, then you're like, Ishvar, you don't have money. And you're like, no, but we look nice, we don't need money. And all of that speaks to your understanding of the prowess that you have as a woman. You can sit there. If I wear a specific kind of top, I just have to sit and and it's fine. I have my drinks for the evening. So all of that stuff, those are places where you need guidance as a young woman. And it's different for men because there's that pressure on people like Tangeni to kind of provide, because we think to ourselves, okay, Maple, yeah, I like this guy. That is okay, but what car does he drive? Where does he live? All of those are questions that speak to kind of, sexual dynamics that we incorporate into the relations that we have as young people, where we would need some kind of guidance. How that perpetuates gender-based violence. I think it's important to recognize that even when we're coming from our households, a lot of us have a lot of unprocessed sexual trauma. And there's two things that fall under that. One is the idea that speaks to, again, why spaces like Be Free are so important. Only the last December holiday did I learn about the most effective forms of contraception. Now you realize how that is very disorienting, because you're like, okay, a whole Be Free ambassador, you're here talking about contraception and the importance of these conversations. But I was there asking my mom, okay, so where can I find an IUD? Where can I find a condom? And still gathering up the courage to walk into Discam and ask, can I find grape-flavored condoms somewhere? So all of those things are places where we really need guidance as young people. So one, it's how much we shy away from sexual relationships, and we shy away from them, and that contributes, for example, to unprocessed sexual trauma. You come here and someone describes in technical terms what is rape, if you don't give enthusiastic consent, then you've been coerced. All of those things are things that you don't know when you're growing up. You come here and you think, oh, I've been molested, or oh, I've been harassed. So all of those things are important to discuss as we're having these conversations at Be Free. And then a last thing that I also just want to add on to, everything that we've mentioned here is how, if there's anything that I'd like anyone to take away from this conversation, is the importance of individual, persistent daily action in deconstructing any kinds of structures or notions which force us to shy away from sex, because those are very dangerous. And this speaks to what Risto mentioned, right? At his age, his mom being surprised to find a condom in his trousers. Sometimes we don't even realize that we have these biases. I have a friend of mine who was going out with a friend, and she said, oh, shoot, but I don't have a condom. This was, 3 weeks ago? And I thought to myself, why do you need a condom? And it's like, because, all of those things are things that we don't realize. We don't have those cultural biases. That's why it's so important to have these conversations.
Thank you, Berta, for that input. Just to maybe add one last thing onto what Berta said, when it comes to gender-based violence, I personally feel that there's still a lack of support in our communities, that being our universities, at homes, generally everywhere. It's very difficult to, find counselors who are persistently there, who you can go to or who you can speak to, or sometimes because there's no support, you'd rather sit in that violent or traumatic relationship because you're afraid of what might happen if you try to leave. So again, these are conversations we need to have. And as young people, if you know your friend is in a domestic violent relationship, you can't by no means encourage that just because she's probably getting paid or she's getting money, transactional sex, all these things. Let's be one another's, shoulders. Let's guide one another to counselors, and let's remind each other that, at the end of the day, it's okay not to be okay, but you cannot be okay for too long. You need to find help, So I think this wraps up our conversation. It was quite an insightful dialogue, I believe, and I'm sure each of us took something out of this conversation that we can actually go and apply wherever we go. If there are any questions from the audience, they are welcome. Our panelists will also be outside after the whole event, so be free to engage. Be free. Any questions? None? Okay, I see a question. No questions. Okay, then we can just engage after the event. Thank you very much.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming out tonight. I go by the name of Valley. Now tonight, I'm not your friend, because tonight I You try to put me down, you can stop me. But I'm coming. Like a big story. Put that I need. Put that I need. Put that I need.
Yeah, we just want to thank those panelists for that very, very interactive dialogue. We could see that from everyone, what we could grasp, what everyone was saying in terms whether it's approaching a condom dispenser or whether it's reaching out in terms of mental health. It's for us to just be free and just really take it heads on. So I just want to do a roll call of all the campuses that are here. So give me an indication if you are here. You're not main campus? One of my colleagues told me I shouldn't embarrass them today, but now they are embarrassing me. You guys are embarrassing. You're not main campus? Commercial campus? Nooitdam campus? WVTC? NAST? Okay, can you go campus too, Liga? Beautiful. So next up, we will have an... Sorry, who did I leave out? Oh, I'm saving the best for last. I was saying wait for the best. Yeah. Are you Oh, LSISO, they are here. So next we are also going to have another interactive dialogue. After that, we'll open up the floor for questions. We want you guys to ask brutally honest questions, but remember, being honest does not mean being mean. With that being said, let's welcome the First Lady of the Republic of Namibia, Madam Genkos, as well as the Executive Director of UNAIDS, Ms. Winnie. Ladies and gentlemen, let's rise with a round of applause, please.
I was amused when Bert and Tuwilika were talking about being ashamed to go to condom dispensers and get condoms. Because the reality is, when I was your age, we were even ashamed to go into a shop and buy tampons or pads because of the shame that is associated with things unnecessarily. So you end up going to buy chips, cool drink, all kinds of unnecessary things, and at the bottom, you put in your tampons or your pads. And the older you get, the less you worry about those things. So you go into the shop, you grab your tampons, you just pay for tampons, you don't care anymore. Because with age comes a little bit of confidence. And I'm thinking of this hall specifically, because in this hall, I sat and wrote my last exams. Because so Emona was obviously not a feature. I see there's a building behind here. There used to be a swimming pool there. Next door here, I think there was a squash court where we used to play. And I used to stay in Block B. This Block B that's here, I don't know if it still exists there. Now, at every campus, there's a drama block. And that drama block was Block B, where I unfortunately had to stay. If anything went wrong at UNAM, at campus hostel, it was Block B. And I was the quietest person in Block B. But when I sat here writing that last exam, I was pregnant. And that child who I was pregnant with turned 21 on Saturday. And so when you were talking about risky sexual behavior, and I was in that relationship from that pregnancy for a good 10, 15 years thereafter. So I didn't think that was a risky sexual behavior. But on reflection, it was. Because we tend to associate risky sexual behavior with people who are all over the place. And that's not the case. Risky sexual behavior, so sex has got a very nice thing attached to it, but it's also got risk to it. So when that risk happens, that's risky sexual behavior. So these whoops, I call them whoops pregnancies. Many of us had whoops pregnancies. Not planned, not thought about, just whoops. and that was risky sexual behavior because it didn't have to be a whoops. And a whoops can be, ooh, okay, I'm pregnant. Ooh, I've got an STI. Ooh, I've got HIV. Ooh, what an idiot I was just with. And I'm not talking about rape because to me, rape isn't sex. And it's not about sex either, it's about power. Which goes into my next point because you're talking a lot about intergenerational relationships, which we used to call sugar daddies, sugar mommies. Now we've got nice stuff to talk, intergenerational relationship. And I want to clarify one thing about intergenerational relationships. So firstly, they're a problem and they're a driver of the fact that many of you young women sitting here between the age of 16 to 24 have a 3 to 4 times higher chance of contracting HIV than to your male counterpart sitting right next to you. Can I say that again? A girl of 16 to 24 has a 3 to 4 times higher chance of contracting HIV than a boy or a young man of 16 to 24. Why is that? It's sugar daddies. And that's part of the challenge of intergenerational relationships. And there's a number of reasons. We also know that 1 in every 3rd girl, her sexual debut is not voluntary. It's forced. We know a number of things around this. So we must be careful when we use some of these terms, because I just want to deconstruct intergenerational relationships from how I see it. I am in an intergenerational relationship. does that make it immediately abusive? It doesn't. So we shouldn't associate intergenerational relationships with abuse. Where the abuse starts is where there's a power differential. Does that make sense? So if I am a student and I engage in a sexual relationship with my lecturer because I want good marks, there's a power differential. And that's a transactional relationship, because transactional isn't just about money. It's about any form of benefit that you seek in a relationship. Now, what this power differential does, this young student who wants an A or she doesn't want to fail, what happens to her negotiating power, Daniel, when she does go to your condom dispenser? She has a condom in her pocket. And she says to the lecturer, let's use a condom. Because all I'm actually trying to do is get good grades. And the lecturer says, I'm not into condoms. We're not going to use condoms. She doesn't have the negotiating power to insist, because there's a power differential. When he's paying for your school fees, whether it's a taxi driver who brings you to school, whether it's somebody who's paying your rent, who gives you money, there's a power differential there that makes you vulnerable, because your negotiating power is reduced. And this is typical of intergenerational relationships, because they tend to be transactional. But the power dynamic is the key. So a student who has an older man who looks after her, who has no negotiating power, is what we normally see when we talk about these intergenerational relationships. But a married woman, married to a man, and they're the same age, but she's scared of him. She can't negotiate reproductive health issues with him, because he'll either beat her or he'll stop funding her. She's not in the intergenerational relationship, but she's in the same position as this young student who's in a transactional relationship. What unites these two women? Power dynamics. Now, the power dynamic that worries me increasingly is, I know it's true of IUM, I know it's true of UNAM. I'm not sure about NUDAM. It's true of NUST. And that there's more young women graduating from these institutions than young men. The reason that stresses me is that it's going to bring in a power dynamic which many of us aren't equipped to deal with. Myself and many young people, young professionals who graduated from this university, particularly women, found ourselves in relationships where many were earning more than their spouse. That's if they could find one. And it's complex. It's complex. So figuring out how we're going to manage these power dynamics is one of the most important things you're going to do. Anybody in a relationship, and when I'm talking about relationships, I'm talking about whether it's a girl with a girl relationship, a boy with a boy relationship, a girl with a boy relationship. You must figure out how you're going to manage the power dynamics. The story of, your chili sit up your cop, she tells you what to do, she bosses you around. Ay, no karo ito kanto ba kom kintu. I see you guys are laughing and you're hitting each other with your hands, because these are the things. Can we go out today, or do you need to ask your wife? Can't your girlfriend also stay behind so we can have a boys' night? What kind of girlfriend is this, just following around every time? Now, you too may manage your power dynamic, but your friendship circle may not understand it. So this is why power dynamics are important. So I just wanted to quickly highlight that. And I'm going to stop with my part because I really want to acknowledge Daniel and Roman. The first time we met, I think, was in Amsterdam. And they had a pavilion, which was world class. It was just unbelievable what they managed to convene from a young people's perspective. And we had a similar session to this with young people from all over the world. And Daniel and Roman will tell you, the issues that you guys were talking about here was what I was hearing young people from all over the world talking about in Amsterdam. These issues are interconnected and they are global. But why I'm raising Daniel and Roman is I want you guys to start thinking about internationalizing your CVs. Because these two young men from Germany have managed to create an NGO that has global impact. And what is it that stops you guys here in Windhoek from creating NGOs that have global impact? What is it? What? Nothing. It's imagination. The person has run, she's born and bred African from Uganda, freedom fighter, former politician, former many things. But she has run international organizations, big organizations. So obviously she was at UNDP, but she went to become the head of Oxfam. Now she's the head of UNAIDS. And I really want to give her the space and the time to speak about her journey, because I want you to be inspired by Africans who've gone and conquered the world. The university where my husband graduated from, Fordham, in New York, they've got this thing for graduates where they say, go and set the world on fire. I love that. Not go and set Katutura on fire. Ludwigsdorf on fire, Kleinwindhoek, Okakarara, Oshakati. No, go and set the world on fire, guys. We must think bigger than Okamatapati, Rehoboth, Keetmanshoop, Katima. Because when I watch this panel speaking, you guys are world class. You guys are Maple, Bertha, Tangeni. Risto, I'm not happy with Risto because I don't know why his mom was doing his pants to find his condom. Risto, at your age, it's not about the condom. Why is your mom still washing your clothes? But you guys are world class. And I want you to start thinking further than UNAM and IUM and NAST. Because there is a bigger world out there and you guys can compete at those stages because I've seen young people on international stages. And what I saw here was high quality. So I think I'm going to do what Tangeni is talking about. We're going to have a wine evening because I want to chill with you guys. Because my husband is also making allegations. Apparently I like chilling with young people because I just want to go drink alcohol with them. No, it's not true. Yes, we'll drink red wine together, but I also want to chill with you. Because we must figure out how we are going to go and set the world on fire. So this is a woman sitting next to me who has gone and set the world on fire, and she's still setting it on fire. And we mustn't take it for granted that we have people of this caliber who are here in this country getting to see you on these platforms, because the network you build, because what she'll remember is not you guys who are scared to ask questions. She'll remember the ones who spoke. So she'll remember Maple, she'll remember Tangeni, she'll remember Twilika, Bertha. Those are the people she'll remember. Risto. Who else? Suzanne. Those are the people she'll remember. So figure out how you're going to make sure that Winnie remembers your name when she thinks of her trip to Windhoek. So Winnie, I'm going to hand over to you, and I'd really love you to just share your story, your experience, and what your observations are.
Thank you. Thank you, First Lady. How lucky you are to have a First Lady like your First Lady. She's cool. She's cool. She's approachable. She's smart. And she talks the tough talk. I wish there were more adults like that. So thank you, First Lady, and for using your gift to connect with young people. You've asked me to talk about myself, my journey. I will. I'll talk also about, because it's a lot around power. I'll talk about power. I'll talk about sex and AIDS in my story. So, yes, I'm from Uganda. The day I was born, I'm going far, you can see how old I am, but I'll make it short. I was born in a pastoralist family. My ancestors kept cows. You keep cows here in Namibia. So it's a shared tradition. So my father had gone to see his cows. My mother got into labor and went to hospital. They were simple people. They were both teachers. My mother was a primary school teacher, my father a secondary school teacher. So in the hospital, I was born, and I was the second born, a second girl. So then my father comes from his farm 20 miles away and finds me there and looks at me and calls me Karagwa. Now, as I was growing up, I started to ask my mother, why did my dad call me Karagwa? Because the immediate meaning of that word is the one who will inherit, like I'm going to be his heir. But one, I was not the firstborn. Two, I was a girl, and our culture is that it's boys who inherit. And my mother had gone on to have 6 children, including now 3 girls, 3 boys. The one after me was a boy. So I thought, why did he pick me to be the one who will inherit? And my mom looked at me and said, no, that's not what he meant, darling, sorry. Your dad saw a second girl and got worried that he's just going to have a line of girls and no boy. So he named you his fear, because the word Karagwa can also mean destined. So he was saying, I'm destined to have only girls, with a question mark at the end. In our culture, when you fear something, you name it, then it won't happen. So he named me his fear. So I went straight to my father, must have been about 6, 7. And I said, so you didn't want me when I was born? Why? I said, well, you called me destined because you thought you're going to never have a boy. So you wanted a boy, you were disappointed. So you didn't want me. I said, who told you that? I said, my mother. I said, don't listen to her, she's lying, she's lying. I named you Karagwa because I meant Karagwa, the one who will inherit. So I will inherit all your wealth? I said, no, I didn't say that, but you will inherit. So anyway, we started a journey with my father of always asking him, so you didn't want me because you wanted a boy. You were disappointed I was a girl, so you don't want girls. And he kept telling me, no, I love you equally with a boy, and you are equal to a boy. My journey on equality started there, always insisting that a girl, a boy, a man, a woman are human beings and born equal and must be treated equally. So that ran through my entire life. Up to today, I fight for equal rights of men and women, transgender people, whoever you are, every human being is equal. That's my story. Yeah. So as I was growing up, we fell under a brutal military dictatorship of a man called General Idi Amin. And I was just turning 12 when he took power. So my entire teenage years, high school, was shaped by this brutal dictatorship. We lived in fear. For us, girls and women, I mean soldiers, they were out above the law. And were they reckless and brutal, and they would pick a girl. If you're walking on the street, a soldier liked you, he would just pull you off the street, take you and make you his wife, no questions asked. Just like that. So many girls were abused, raped. We had to hide. Then he came up with laws. He would announce on the radio, he had no parliament. Parliament was dissolved. He would announce on the radio, from today, I have banned miniskirts. So, okay, we had to throw away our miniskirts. But then the question is, how long should it be? So whatever length of dress you had, any soldier could say, that's too short, and you are in trouble, and he's taken you. Then he said, I'm banning wigs, and I'm banning lipstick. Everything about women's bodies, he was coming out with yet another law, yet another decree. So we lived afraid of stepping out, and our parents wouldn't let us step out because they knew what would happen. Men were disappearing, killed, and so we lost about 500,000 people under that dictatorship. Men just disappearing. But now, it made me angry. I was an angry girl because my parents were activists too. They were saying, this is not right, but you don't have to comply, because there were some girls who were complying. They would also find a soldier and drop out of school and marry a soldier because it's an easy life. He's got a fast car and he's got money. But our parents said, this is wrong and it has to be resisted. Don't do anything wrong, but don't accept that this is normal or right. So I grew up with a hatred for violence, for dictatorship, and I was angry as a little girl. I get into university. I was a smart student. I got into engineering faculty. We had one university at that time in my country. I came top of my class. I got a place. I started the year. I guess I had a little bit of fun. And at the end of the year, I failed one subject. And I was given like a month to resit it and then continue into my second year. Now, meanwhile, we were so few women in engineering. In my year, we were 3 girls in a class of 60. In the second year, there was 1 girl. In the third year, there were 3 girls. And in the last year, the 4th year, there was 1. So you could see we were very few in the engineering faculty. So one day, I am reading my books, trying to get ready to do this supplementary exam. There's a knock on my door, and in comes a teaching assistant from the engineering faculty. He was a person who had got his degree in engineering and was staying on trying to get a master's degree, so he was a teaching assistant. He didn't teach me though, but I saw him in the faculty. So he came and said, welcome. I gave him a seat, but I felt nervous. Why is he coming to my room? I don't know him, really. So he said, so you're getting ready for the exam? I said, yes, I am. Are you confident you're going to pass it? I said, absolutely, 100%. I said, why? I said, well, because I just know I didn't put in enough time. Now I'm putting it in. It's not hard. And he said, why are you overconfident? I said, look, I thought really he was. I said, I'm not overconfident. We had 10 students in this class of 60 from my school. When we came, I was better than them. I know if they could do it, I can do it. Yeah. So then he said, I think you are naive. Look at the faculty and look at the girls there and tell me what you know about them. I said, well, I know that They have been having difficulties. They've repeated years. Almost all the girls in the other classes had repeated a year. And he said, so why do you think you are different? Then I started to think, why is he saying this? It's true, girls were finding it so hard to excel in that faculty. Then he said, look at the girl in the third year. There was one who had gone through first, second, third without repeating a year. He said, so look at her, what do you think? He was telling me that she goes out with a lecturer. That's what I realize he was saying, because she was going out, dating a lecturer very openly. And so I saw that he was telling me, if you want, I can help you. That was his next statement, that he can help me pass my exam, and going towards saying you need to have a lecturer in order to get on and win. I was so offended. I don't know where I got the end. It's the anger over me must have been, that I said to him, okay, enough, get out of my room. And I was shaking. But I said, he said, what did you say? I said, get out of my room before I scream. He left. Then I knew in my head, I'm out of here. I'm not going to stay at this university. So my story is long, but I left. I became a refugee in the UK because I wanted to do my degree and get it without having to transact sex with a teacher. I couldn't accept that. Power, the use of power in sex. Sex should be a loving relationship. Sex should not be about imposing your power over someone. I rejected that. Yes. Girls, here I invite you to reject that. It's still happening all over campuses. It's not an African thing, it's global. That those who are supposed to take care of you, to give you an education, to get the most out of you, are the same ones who prey on you. Don't allow it. Don't allow. I was lucky. I fought to. It was a long story. Eventually, I got to the UK, but I had many people who helped me, who understood the anger I had and how I wasn't going. I took a right stand. So people helped me. I crossed the border at night under Idi Amin and declared myself a refugee. Now, in England, as a refugee, that's when my anger came out. Being so angry, I was feeling I needed to do something. So I went into the union. I became a real activist, feminist activist. I joined women's organizations. I joined political movements. Do you know I actually met your president, Sam Nujoma, in London? Yes, because we all went from our campus. We were supporting your struggle for liberation. I was in the Pan-African movement. I came there. Yeah. I heard him speak. There were like 3 men. And I remember feeling so inspired. Rhodesia was also seeking independence. We also went down to London to see Robert Mugabe when he came to negotiate their independence. So I got immersed in struggles for justice. I understood liberation, read about it, protest. We protested against apartheid. Every month we would sit in on our campus, we would occupy the campus and sit and block entrances to buildings because we were asking our university to divest from South African companies. It had investments there. So these things shaped me. These things. So point number 2, be an activist when you are young. You have nothing to lose. Fight for the cause that you feel in your heart, whether you are fighting for gender identity, because there are people whose identity is not accepted, whether you want to fight for women's rights, whether you want to fight for political rights of minorities, do something. Put out your passion for justice. So that's my story. I became an activist long before I came. I was very political. I joined a movement to fight dictatorship in Uganda. That movement was then led by many in exile because of Amin. Many people fled. And we formed a human rights movement. We would go and demonstrate in Trafalgar Square, London. This is a place where everybody demonstrates. We would write letters to United Nations. We would send delegations of more older men to meet national leaders everywhere. We did all the stuff that young people do to fight for their country. So I went back to my country when Amin fell. I remember the joy of returning and the feeling that now we can build our country and wanting to contribute. These were my best years. So these were best years. I would not go into the details, but I ended up becoming a member of parliament. I was a diplomat too. In the parliament, I was elected 3 times by my community. Again, elected by people who started by saying, but should we choose a woman? They didn't want me. I was contesting a man who was a minister. And the man, and it was a special parliament to make a constitution. And the man was church-going, very respected, my parents' generation. I was like a youth, I think. I wasn't a youth, I was 34, I think, or 33. And he was an older man who had done many jobs, was a minister. So, but I was from the struggle. I was with the revolutionary credentials, and I could talk the language of social justice with an experience. So this man, when we were contesting, people said, how can we choose you? You are a woman. You don't have a home. But I rented a house. They said, it's not a home. They said, a home is when you are married. If a woman doesn't have a husband, she can't have a home, in my language. In my language, the word home, eka, is associated with a man. If you are a widow, they don't even say it is your home. They say it's the home of your son. So a woman never has a home. So they said, you have no home, you have no children. Actually, I had a nice apartment and I was sharing it with my boyfriend. We were not married. So I was really breaking all the rules of society. But you know what? Women voted me because I went on the campaign trail and I talked about the rights of those who are downtrodden. I talked about the rights of young people because we are ageist. We don't respect the voice of young people in our cultures. I talked about rights of young people. So youth and women had me elected 3 times in the Ugandan parliament. Whenever I was there, I was quite difficult because I knew I was a difficult backbencher because I had my support. I supported the liberation government, the movement government, but if it was wrong, I could get up and disagree with them and say to them, look, I'm speaking for my people. So that empowered me more. And I just want to tell you young people that my last point is about sex. That, you know, there must be equality in sexual relations. Without that, what your First Lady was saying is that then violence comes in. It is violence in sexual relations that is mostly responsible for the higher vulnerability of young women and of adolescents and young women, what the First Lady was saying about. it is violence in the relationships. It's force in the relationships. Of course, with older men, it is force, because normally the girl is probably resisting, but also between yourselves. There is an attitude amongst young men that if she's saying no, she really wants it. No. Yesterday I got a lesson from what is it? Condomize. This guy he taught us, there he is. He taught us that the thing is that young people they don't want sex. They want awesome sex. Isn't that cool? Awesome sex. Meaning loving sex, not forceful sex. So my message to young men is that see yourselves differently. It's cool to negotiate for sex peacefully. It's not cool to force. We did a survey in Latin America, 13 countries, 2,000 young people were surveyed. You know what? In most of those countries, girls were saying, and boys too, that if your boyfriend demands to have the password of your phone, it's because he loves you. That's not love. That's force. That's violence in my book. They were saying that if you have an argument and he slaps you and then apologizes, that's okay. He loves you. It's love. That's not love. That's violence in my book. So I leave you that message that I have demanded equality throughout my life, and it has paid off for me and also led me to be in movements for equality and to make a difference for others. I don't negotiate that. I take it for granted. I want that to be yours too. Treat everyone equally, regardless of their gender, regardless of their sex, whether they are men, women, transgender, whether they have a different sexual orientation, lesbian, gay. We are all human beings. Equality should be the key word, and nonviolence. With nonviolent relationships, we can beat HIV/AIDS because we know how to use a condom, we know PrEP, we know how to test, we know how to be on treatment, but the infection, in my view, comes mainly, I should remember what First Lady said. There is also sex that happens at risk when you are excited. That can cause infection. So one has to be always ready, always knowing that in case it happens, I've got protection. In case it happens, in case my boyfriend turns up when I'm not here. But the sexual violence is my message. Take it out of relationships, make sex about love, make sex awesome. That's my last word. Thank you so much. So I think I hand it to you.
Yeah, so we're going to have an interactive session. And while you guys are thinking what you're going to ask Winnie, because I'm here, you can ask me questions any other day, but you're not going to have another opportunity to build your network with somebody as powerful as Winnie. So while you're thinking about what you're going to ask her, I want to end off with what Winnie was talking about, and I want to quote Risto when he says, I like to talk about myself and about his own first sexual experience. And I want each of you to quietly think about the insecurity and the lack of information around your first sexual experience. Because as a parent, I think my kids are now big, I'm assuming they're sexually active. But there was never a day in the life of any of you or in the life of a parent where a child has come to knock on the door of their parent or their guardian and say, knock, knock, mommy, I'm going to the movies with my boyfriend and we're going to have sex for the first time in his car in the parking lot. That conversation has never happened. Never has a guy said to his parents, yeah, I'm now 14 and me and my girlfriend, today we're going to do it. Parents just kind of figure out that, this one. Oh, Mugwari para, you people like faces, you like women. Those are the lectures you're getting when your parents start to figure out, okay, there's something happening here. So there's nothing as a parent I can tell you after the fact, meaning I need to give you the information and I like Daniel's word. What did he say? The safety device. So I need to start talking to my kids long before they start with those things. So the day that they do decide, I know they're not going to consult me, but hopefully I've empowered them with information. And I often worry about where we do get our information. Bertha taught me something, peer parenting. That young people are parenting each other. And they've become peer parents to one another. Peer psychologists, because you guys are counseling each other. But if the person counseling you has got bad advice, you are, okay, you're in trouble. So where did you get, let's go back to your first sexual experience. Because unfortunately, I know in this room, there's somebody where it wasn't pleasant. And I'm not talking about the pain that accompanies it for women. I'm talking about rape. And when we talk about that, many of you are going to think I'm talking just about girls. But I also know that the first sexual encounter of young boys is normally coercion by an older woman. Because we prey on young boys, and it could be a cousin, it could have been a family friend, it could have been an aunt. But young, older women or older girls who sexualize young boys, and we just assume all boys like sex. And we force ourselves on these young kids. So many first sexual experiences of young boys is also not consensual. And even if you don't think that was rape, it was coercive, as Bertha says. It was coercive. I read in the newspaper today somebody having a defense saying we were both drunk. That guy hasn't read the Rape Act. So let me talk to the guys here quickly about the definition of rape in Namibian law. If she is drunk and you are sober, even if she says yes, even if everybody saw you leave the club together, holding each other, kissing each other, if she wakes up the next day and she says she was raped, good luck to you. If both of you were drunk, both of you consented, but one of you decides the following day that it wasn't consensual because they weren't they didn't have the ability to consent, that's rape. If you're a landlord or a lecturer and you propose sex to somebody and they accept your proposal, they consent to the sex, is that rape? Yes, no? No? Yes? The Namibian law defines that as rape. Because what Namibian law does, it requires what's called affirmative consent. Meaning, and Bertha mentioned it, if you are in a position of power, if you're a boss, a landlord, a lecturer, and you use a power dynamic to obtain a yes, it's coercive. Our law recognizes that as rape. So a proper understanding of what rape entails and constitutes and is defined as will help a lot of you to define your experiences, because many people will explain or describe a scenario, and in my mind I'm thinking, that's rape. And that's why it's so uncomfortable for many of us to go back into our childhood, because then we realize there was a lot of rubbish happening. You go back with your adult mind and you think of some of the comments that adults made around you. And you realize that wasn't right. And that's why it's not a pleasant experience to go back with your woke mind into your childhood life. Because then you realize, my dad was kind of an ass. My uncle was actually a predator. Oh, that relationship, that cousin of mine who was who had an intellectual disability and she was always pregnant every holiday, that was rape. So visit your childhood at your peril, because there's lots of trauma in all of our childhood, mine included. And that's why we encourage help-seeking behavior. That's why we have people like Bernardus on our staff. So if any of you are triggered by any of the conversations here, please reach out to Bernardus. Their role is to help people figure out and help you place how your thoughts about certain actions, unresolved trauma, is something that you shouldn't live with. It's risky. It's risky. And risky sexual behavior can expose you to HIV. And I also want you, when we talk about HIV, I want you to remember that by the year 2000, that was the year that we started giving ARVs in this country. That was 21 years ago. Imagine how many children your age who are on this campus were born with HIV. It's not their fault, they did nothing, who are currently on ARV now. And reflect on some of the comments you make about HIV. You never know what the status of the person you're speaking to is. Be sensitive. You like to test people with your eyes. You people have most HIV sensors in your eyes. You check the person up and down. This one can't be HIV, I don't need the condom. Stop testing people with your eyes, guys. Because these days, somebody who is on treatment can bring it to a point where it's undetectable. And when it's undetectable, they can't transmit it. Now, some of these dodgy pastors, they then say, they've been cured through the power of Jesus Christ. It's not Jesus Christ, it's medication. So HIV is no longer a death sentence. And there's exciting new technology coming into science where there's likely to be a cure or a vaccine. Not now. So it's not, if you are HIV positive, if you contract HIV positive, it's not a death sentence. Some of us with high blood pressure and diabetes, we're likely to die before somebody who adheres to treatment. But as Dr. Shangula always tells us about COVID, prevention is better than cure. So that's what Daniel and Roman are trying to tell you as well. Condoms is about prevention, and it's not only about preventing HIV, it's also STIs, it's the HP virus. We all know what the HP virus is. No. So the HP virus is also sexually transmitted. It's mostly men who give it to women. It is men who give it to women. It doesn't have a consequence for men, but it has severe consequences for women. So it can cause cervical cancer. So many women have the HP virus, but not all of them end up having cervical cancer, but that is the cause of cervical cancer. And cervical cancer is the third most fatal cancer. Many women are dying of cervical cancer, and it doesn't make sense because you can be vaccinated against cervical cancer. And cervical cancer can take up to 10 years to kill you. So why is cervical cancer killing so many women in this country? When it's preventable and it's treatable. The reason is because we're finding out too late, not using condoms, And the third thing, we're presenting too late for treatment. So a simple pap smear will be able to help you very quickly, and you can get treated and it will go. But if it's found too late, like it is in most women, it will kill you. So in the Western world, many women are vaccinated. They're not dying of cervical cancer. It's in Africa. So I want the girls here, please go and check for HPV virus. If you don't have it, get vaccinated. If you do have it, it's not a death sentence. Because it doesn't mean you'll get cervical cancer. And to the guys, use protection. Because the last time a child was born from only a woman falling pregnant is when Jesus Christ was born. There's no such story anymore. There's a mother, there's a father. When we're talking about teenage pregnancies, we're just talking about the girls. These kids didn't impregnate themselves, it's you guys. So if you don't want to be a father, you know what you gotta do. Because many of you, when you hear that the person is pregnant, you go change, you run to the MTC, you get another Tango number, you change your number. You're laughing, it's true. This is what you guys are doing. It's true, ne? Thank you, my guy. Thank you for agreeing. They go change their numbers. I see me in the knee. So she was also with Kevin that other weekend. Also, no, it's not me. 1, 2, 3. No. Stop denying your kids. And they come out looking just like you. So let's be responsible, guys. And with men, there's also consequences. A lot of the infertility that men experience later in life has got to do with untreated STIs. It's also got to do with these tight genes. You there, you've got a very tight gene on, you must be careful. Yes, you don't look at your friend. Those things weren't meant for you. So be careful. Be careful. Protect your future fertility, protect your future families, and protect yourself. And you do this by letting your things hang and jiggle a little bit. Don't wear these tight clothes that you like to wear. And use protection. Use safety devices. So now I want you to build your network. I want you to ask questions. You can ask any question either to myself, to Winnie, to the panelists, to Risto, who's part of the Condomize campaign. There's a number of experts here. We've got Dr. Alti, who's from UNAIDS as well. You've got Daniel and you've got Roman. You might want to ask him about how to start an international NGO. They're here. You've got the Deputy Minister of Youth and Sport and National Service. There's a lot of questions you can ask her. We've got Sheila Russo from UNFPA. There's a lot of people here who can answer very technical questions. So if you've got any question that you want to ask, hit it.
Alon, if I may, I was given an indication that Ms. Winnie has another commitment. So can we limit the questions to 2 and just let them know that all these other offices are still open. So any other day you can approach any of these offices, if that's okay with you.
That's fine with me.
Okay. Any 2 questions from the crowd, please? Okay, we have one from Pombile, one more.
I think let's make it 4.
Okay,
because I know what her next appointment is, and I think I've got some authority to say let's make it about 4.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for sharing the platform. My name is Pombili Shilongo, radio, television, media personality, but of recent I've also stepped into GBV activism. With the project that I ran last year, which is ensuring life-saving amongst adolescents, women, and persons with disability. I think the most famous person in this building today is Risto, because he joined me on 6 regions that we sort of like embarked on. I was born and raised in Windhoek, and so some of the things that I've experienced in the region and saw sort of traumatized me to a point of really seeing a psychologist. Not because that I'm not aware it doesn't happen, but because of the reality of what it truly is. And I'd like to share some of these things to find, obviously you will resonate with them growing up and sharing your journey with us. But there's some regions within Namibia where our cultures sort of determine a woman's reality. And if you have to look at it in some of the regions, 1 out of 10 girls doesn't even think of varsity. They don't even make it to varsity. I've visited schools where girls are already married and pregnant and in grade 8. I've gone to villages where a Himba baby girl is already married traditionally to an uncle or whatever the case might be. They're just waiting for her to have her first period. There's a lot of young girls right now that are watching this on social media platforms that I would assume, obviously, they're not in the building, but would like to find out from you, including myself, how did you break your culture barriers? Being a woman wasn't even allowed to wear a miniskirt in your era. I can just imagine how much more of what a woman was not supposed to do. And you persevering and breaking all of these barriers all the way to parliament and all of these phenomenal things that you have achieved. There's a girl in the village right now thinking, how do I even break my own cultural barriers to just go to varsity and study and become? Perhaps you can share that with us.
It's really a good question, and it's a challenge to all of us. I think there are two big, maybe three big forces that drove change in social norms, in cultural norms in my country during my lifetime, my mother's lifetime, even my grandmother's lifetime. When I look at the three of us, both are gone. My grandmother was born at the beginning of the 20th century, around 1905. She was married off at the age of about 15. Never went to school. This was colonial times. She was married to a man who had another wife, he was an older man with a family. And he had, his eldest son was even older than this young wife. Get that? So my grandmother was a widow within 9 years. The old man died. So she's now in a home where there are 2 wives, 2 widows, an older widow who is as old as her own mother, with about 7 children, and she with 2 children, a boy and a girl, young, my mother and her brother. Then, according to tradition, I'm telling you this to show you the transition of culture and rights and how it has happened. He went and, an uncle, a brother of her husband, was a middle-level chief. He came as the elder to bury his brother and to distribute the wealth of the family. So he did that. Then he talked to the 2 wives and their children. They had a lot of cattle. He gave each child their cattle. And when it came to my grandmother and her 2 children, he said, well, you're a young woman. You have 2 choices. You can go back to your family and remarry, because you're really young. She was now like barely in her early 20s or so. You can go back to your home and marry, but you leave us our children. I will take them to my home where he was working in the capital and raise them, seeing that he didn't want the stepmother to take 2 more children. So that's option 1. Option 2, I am a chief. I am in the colonial government. I cannot do what tradition would ask me to do, which is to marry you. Because in our culture, a widow would be inherited by a brother-in-law. I can't inherit you because I'm in the colonial government. I'm not allowed to do that. So you can be inherited by your stepson. The boy who is a brother, half brother, a bit older, says, if you want to stay in this home, we can't allow you because you will become promiscuous, you will sleep around with many men, you must be married to someone. And that is the only man I can give you is this one. My grandmother refused and went away, but without cattle, without children. 2 years later, she was missing her children. She came back to marry this man and actually had a child with him. But he was so violent. After a couple of years, she walked away again. She died a very wealthy woman, but always as a single woman. But now, this is a story of a woman in 1905 growing up, no schooling, early marriage, violence in the home, inherited as a widow. Those were the options. My mother, her daughter, was luckier. She went to live in the chief's home. She got a Catholic education. She became a primary school teacher. She had choices. When she married, she started women's clubs in our home. That's where I get my feminist activism. She had the village, the women came home to learn to read and write, to learn to do early childhood development, to do skills and all that. It was a government program. If you were a teacher, you could be part of helping the government to do community development. But look, at that time, she and the women who were sitting in the compound of my home were talking about two things. They were saying our daughters must go to school and stay in school. Because at that time, girls could go up to primary 4, 5, then they would take them out to marry them off to get bride wealth. So now women like my mother were saying it's not acceptable. We want our girls to also go further to the highest level. So they were fighting early marriage, and they were fighting for girls' education, for girls to stay in school like boys. That's why I'm here. I'm here because women of my mother's generation were fighting to keep girls in school. My mother didn't have to fight. She was a teacher. She knew the value. But most of the women of my generation, their mothers battled to keep their girls in school. So we are the first generation of well-educated women in our country with choices. But again, many women of my generation are married in polygamous marriages, have got choices were hard for them. For me, I've told you, my father was saying to me, you are equal to a boy. Claim your rights. So I claimed my rights. I was lucky in that sense. I'm a survivor. Come now myself. I go to school, I can go to engineering school. And I went there because my father was saying, you're equal to a boy. When we were filling the papers, I wanted to go for medicine. And before I filled the paper, the boys in my class, we were 30 in the class, high school class, I was the only girl. Then the boys who were sitting near me said, Winnie, show us your form. Are you also going to ask for engineering? I said, why not? They laughed. It was funny. I said, okay, I'm going to put it there and I'm going to show it to you. So I was just challenged. I never even had the interest in engineering, but I was always pushing the barrier to break the tradition, to challenge the thinking, because my father encouraged me to do that, and my mother was an activist on women's rights, girls' rights. So change in my country, I saw three forces. One, the government rolling out education that was subsidized. That put girls in school and it leveled. That's our generation. there was free education mostly at primary level, and then also at university level. Second, the church. Interestingly, the church, and that's why we must bring the church on board. The Anglican Church in Uganda was against early marriage. So they started to insist that we want to see a letter of your daughter in love with this man who is going to marry her. So in other words, they were saying we want the approval of the girl, the bride to be, because parents would just wheel in a boy and a girl and get a marriage done, and they'd never seen each other. It still happens. They've never seen each other. But the parents have negotiated, cows have been exchanged, marriage has happened. So now they were saying, bring a letter. When the church insisted on a letter, some would bring fake, they would force even the girl to write a letter. The priest would still ask, did you write this letter? The girl would be crying, he would send them away. So it was a struggle the church was involved in also for the rights of girls to an education, changing minds about status. Lastly, women's organizations like My Mother and Her Club, they were vocal, and they still are. And I hope that in your country, the women's movement that I've known for years, Sister Namibia and others, I hope that this becoming, is it upper middle income, that women's organizations, youth organizations can still find funding to do their work. It is them who actually fight long battles that change the minds of society about men and women and their roles. And now the battle is very much about those who don't see themselves as men or women, those who are transgender, or those who have a sexual orientation that's not the mainstream. Those too have rights, but we need a movement of human rights to get them to be accepted and for them to enjoy healthy, good lives. So in a long way, I've said 3 generations, 100 years of women's rights movement in the 20th century brought my grandmother, who was inherited in her early 20s, to me, her granddaughter, 100 years later, an engineer with a master's degree who goes on to lead global organizations. You see the difference? Yeah. So change happens, but change is gradual. And when you are an activist, you see yourself as an agent of change, but you don't expect to see a huge change in your lifetime, but you contribute. A long answer.
Right, thank you. I have another question, very quickly. Hi, Miss Winnie. Hi, my name is Bertha, and I have 2 very burning questions, and I'm so glad you're here. The first one speaks to being a powerful woman, and presumably a powerful woman also in your early ages, you know. And my big question is, from sort of, you know, engaging in romantic relationships, it puts you in a very tricky situation where you feel like guys your age are like, but what am I going to do with you? And then you have the option of older men, which many times intergenerational, not necessarily meaning abusive, as Flon pointed out, but many times potentially is abusive, especially in Namibia. That's a problem that we are facing. So as a young woman, romantically and sexually, how do you navigate the space between feeling like your peers have nothing to offer you, quite frankly, no offense, guys, and, you know, having older men to kind of pursue you, because that is also an option. So that's one thing. The second thing is also, you've mentioned, you know, advice that you have is to be an activist when you're younger. What I've realized with doing a lot of work like this, like Be Free and gender-based violence activism, is that many times being an activist puts you on some kind of, not a pedestal, but it gives you a certain degree of social responsibility, and many times people hold you accountable to that. That means you're in Brewers Market, you're living your best life as a young person, you're ordering like your 4th Jägermeister shot, and then the bartender asks, but aren't you the girl who was there at the protests, shutting down whatever? And all of that stuff. How do you navigate, holding on to your youth while still maintaining a significant and impactful degree of activism?
Well, I'm going to also ask the First Lady to answer that question. I'll answer you briefly. First, about relationships. I think that the driver should always be or at least from what I have felt myself, is that I have a deep attraction to somebody. It often has to do with their mind. I'm always attracted to someone whom we debate intellectually and look at issues and talk about public issues. That's me. Huh? Another person, it might be sport. So I think it's so important to connect with a person beyond just sexually, to have an all-round relationship. I think when everything is reduced to just sex, when people treat each other just as it's almost animalistic, like I just want to ease a need. I think that often leads to bad relationships and very short relationships. So I think it doesn't really matter the age if you are connected intellectually, connected in terms of the values, the things you fight for in life. It doesn't matter what age. It means you have connected in a whole way. That's how I see it. What I heard the First Lady talk about are transactional relationships, intergenerational transactional relationships. Those are dangerous because you're not a goat. You shouldn't be bought because somebody has money and you have needs, then a relationship grows. A relationship should not have that power dynamic. The second question you raised is about living in the public eye, being an activist. And I'm sure the First Lady has an experience. We were talking about it a while ago. There is a price to pay because you say, I care about equality. People hold you accountable to it. To me, in my job at Oxfam, I even was sometimes once I was in my senior leadership team meeting, and one of my team said, you say you fight poverty. What about that Gucci bag you have? Of course, I had to put him down and tell him to leave me alone and my Gucci bag. I know where I'm coming from, and I know what sacrifices I have made for my country, for my people, for the world. I can afford my Gucci bag. I had to put him down. Yes. So, but you must always be accountable. You can't hide from that. You have to be accountable. You have to be consistent. You have to live your values. Of course, I was telling this man not to be silly. You can't tell everything about me just from my handbag. I do many things that lift people out of poverty. I can afford something for myself. So, but the point is that you must live your values. You must have a thick, thick skin. I have had times as a politician when I woke up in the morning, I got my newspapers and I couldn't get out of bed because I'm there on the front page with someone saying something wicked that is a total lie, but I know that I can't correct it. It's gone, it's in the media. I will go out and explain. It will get on page 9 in a little corner. Nobody will ever know my truth. And you just say, but you lift yourself up and you say, you know what? I know I didn't do that. I know I didn't say that. I just go and do my job, no apology. I try not to even talk about it. Just keep on doing the good work and not talk about that which is meant to put you down. Let me ask, I think the First Lady must say something about this. We were talking about it. Living in the public eye, having causes, causing controversy by tackling tough issues. So over to you.
I was hoping she wouldn't do that because I've got a lot to say about this topic, but I'm going to keep it short because we are being waited for. And I think living in the public eye, whether you're an activist, I think it's harder when you're a young activist. There's a lot of pressure on young people. If you're in SRC, if you're in any, even just a tutor, the year you leave varsity, there's a lot of pressure on you not to be drunk or to be a normal person. You must be exemplary. And I remember, Bertha, I was very successful very young and made a lot of money very young. And I remember I was in a nightclub called Blue Note here in Windhoek. They had to change their name to Masquerade. These guys don't know what I'm talking about because they just know London and, I don't know, Brewers and... Yes, it's a New York jazz club. So there was one here and I was standing there, but it was time to go home. So as I'm standing there, a young lady comes, oh, you're my role model. I also want to get into the financial sector. And at this point, I sobered up quickly because I realized the expectation this young woman has on me right now, I'm not living up to it. And I decided that, so I was never a nightclub person because like Daniel, don't think it's a German problem, I also can't dance. I probably also dance like a German. I've got many talents, but dancing isn't one of them. So, yeah, you and I, we can normalize each other. So I never used to go to nightclubs really because I'm not a big drinker, I'm not a big dancer, so what business do I have in a nightclub? So that wasn't the reason I didn't go to nightclubs. I just also felt there was this pressure on me to almost be perfect. And because I had fallen pregnant early, I had to show society I am a valuable member of it. And Bertha, I regret that positioning. And I was so anal about it. How many of you have NASFAF scholarships? Most of you. How many of you plan to pay them back? Talk the truth. Because NASFAF started round about the year I started at varsity. It was a long time ago. Nobody paid NASFAF back. Even I didn't pay NASFAF back for a good 6-7 years. Because there I was fighting sheriff of the court. They want to come repossess my things. I must go pay Edgar's the bill. I must pay City of Windhoek. NASFAF was the last of my concerns. But at a point I said to myself, Monica, your trajectory, you're going to become successful. And I started working at an investment bank and I was earning a lot of money. And young, I was about 24, 25. It was over $1 million that time. And I said to myself, go pay NASFAF. Because at the rate you're going, you are going to be humiliated if you are found on a database of people who didn't pay and you could pay. So I went to go pay NASFAF. I think I paid NASFAF in 2008. And I graduated in 99. But I could have paid them earlier. I didn't because nobody paid NASFAF. I think even now nobody pays NASFAF. Guys, go pay NASFAF. Because the problem with NASFAF, they may be inefficient in collection, but one day you're going to be successful 20 years from now. Do you want to be that person who never paid? Do you want to be that leader who talks to society about respecting laws, rules, processes, but you're sitting there at NASFAF? Clear your name from NASFAF as soon as you can. But these are the things I was thinking about when I didn't need to, and I regret it, guys. Because I can never go back to my youth and live my best life. It's done. Don't you see all these people my age in nightclubs with you guys? They're there because they didn't live their best lives when they were young. Now they want to live their best lives when it's late. So live your best life now. Honestly. Be authentic, be responsible, protect yourself from harm. But Bertha, what you'll never protect yourself from is rumors. You'll never protect yourself from that. Even girls who lock themselves every Friday and Saturday night judging other girls who are going out, even rumors are made about them. One thing society is good at is making rumors about people, male or female. So if you think you're going to behave yourself, you're going to live an exemplary life because nobody's going to talk about you, come and talk to me after this event. It's a lie. So do what you are comfortable with. If you do something and it doesn't make you feel good, don't do it again. But if you enjoy doing it, do it again and again and again until you are tired. So don't let that pressure of being an activist, Bertha, stop you from being a young person. You can do both.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Flon. I know Flon indicated that we can have more questions, but at this moment, I really have to be a pushy class captain and say no. So at this juncture, we'd want to take the picture with Daniel Roman and as well as the Deputy Minister for Youth just here in front of the banner. Can we give them another round of applause, please?
Thank you.
On the stage. The stage is fine.
Yeah, fine over there.
Just look there. For a band, one again, anyway. Son of a anyway. For a band, one again, so. For a band, one again, anyway. For a band, one again, so. So. For a band, one again, anyway. For a band, one again, so. Okay. Many wondering why kangaroo.
So we've come to the end of our program. I just want to ask Kennedy Namwele, the Vice President for Commerce Campus, to come give the vote of thanks, closing remarks. Where's Kennedy? Kennedy? Vote of thanks, please.
Okay, ladies and gents, thank you so much. We have almost come to the end of our program. If I can just have maybe 2 minutes of your time to thank every one of you. I would also like first and foremost to thank our First Lady, Ms. Monica Gengus, and also Ms. Winnie for, giving us this platform to share all this awareness with us. And I would also like to thank the O Foundation for giving us these condom distributors. I hope that we use them effectively. Like he said, we must be safe and we must use them with love and respect. And last but not least, I would just like to say that let's go and set the world on fire, like Ms. Winnie said. Thank you so much.